Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the second episode of Be My Guest. I've got an awesome number of guests lined up for you guys tonight. But before we go and get into our guests, I've got one sitting there waiting. I want you guys to share this stream. So we've got the guest tonight. We've got Leanne Shelton from Right Time Marketing, who's going to be talking about copywriting and everything like that. We also have Joy Nicholson, who's also in marketing, but is a business mentor for people looking in the online marketing space. And we've got a self-made billionaire tonight who is the author of a new book released Wednesday called Broken America. And he'll hopefully, all going well, be on just after 7 p.m. To talk about the issues that are going on in that country. So what I'd like you to do is to share this, start a bit of a share squad, and share the stream for me the way you would actually do that. I'll just see if I can get my screen up here, and we can see if we can show you what you need to do here. So you can see over here on the website, if you visit People with a Passion, you just go down to the share button and you click on that button, and that will hopefully, all going well, share it across to your page. So you choose your page that you want to share it to, and you click share now, and that will share it to your timeline. So that's all you need to do. Now, if you share it on Facebook tonight, Australian audience, you will get the opportunity to actually win 2 pizzas, a garlic bread, and a drink, which will be announced next week. If I see your name appear in the shares, then I will run that through a randomizer that will actually announce a winner next week for us. If you're on YouTube, make sure you subscribe to the YouTube channel and write in the comments done to say that you subscribed, and also hit the thumbs up if you're on YouTube. And if you're on Twitter, all you have to do is retweet it and I'll see that. So anyone who does those 3 things, you'll get the opportunity to win pizza if you're in Australia. So that's with thanks to Domino's Australia. So I hope you guys do that. So what I'll do is bring in our first guest, and I'll let her talk about herself and tell us a bit about herself. So without further ado, here is Leanne Shelton, our first guest tonight.
Hello everyone. Thanks, Craig.
How are you?
Great to be here. Yeah, good, thank you. Yes, so a bit about me. All right, so I split my time between being a copywriter and being a marketing consultant. Or like a content marketing consultant, probably to be more specific. So what that means is, in terms of copywriting, yes, you can outsource your copywriting to me, and I specialize in health and wellness in that niche. And I write websites, blogs my favorite, emails, landing pages, sales pages, things like that. And the other side of things is the content marketing consulting, which is helping people DIY. So I run a lot of webinars and courses and half-day marketing strategies. So I help people to just get all that stuff together, learn how to do it, and they can either, just go away and do it all themselves, or ask me to help them put it all into place and make it happen.
That's awesome. So you mentioned the health and wellness space. What is your affinity with that? Why did you choose to go with health and wellness as a category when you could have chosen copywriting in any particular industry?
Great question. I'd heard that I was like a generalist copywriter until about November last year, actually. I didn't want to pick one. I don't know where I should land. I have a very mixed background, worked at a not-for-profit disability organisation and a uni and an online business directory, very mixed. So I couldn't say that I could niche in a particular area. But what I found, because I heard niching was so good for really honing my skill and doing really well in one particular area, and also becoming more known for one particular area. And what I realized is that I do a lot of networking. I love networking. Haven't done so much lately in the last 6 months. Starting to get back into it. But the people I naturally gravitated to were those in health and wellness. And I'm, I've got food intolerances. I've always been conscious of the food side. I'm very much into mindset and that kind of thing. And I just, when those type of people come to me, I'm like, oh, I can really sink my teeth into this project. So it was just kind of a natural progression, and I realized, this is my space. And since then I've now launched a podcast called Marketing and Me, and that's aimed at health and wellness business owners who want to grow their health and wellness business but maintain their own health and wellness at the same time. So I know a lot of them weren't always doing that.
Yeah, so that's pretty good. And niching down is something that people don't understand. Is with people with a passion, I've gone broad, and a lot of people go, why wouldn't you go niche, which is picking a topic or a subject that you're an expert almost in, and specializing in that, because then you narrow your audience. The interesting thing, it's sort of like you can go niche. It'd be like having a sports store only sells sports goods, or a jeweler sells jewelry. But then you have your general store, which is your Kmart's and your, Big W's and Myers, and they have their fingers in a whole heap of pies. So both technically approaches do work. However, from a marketing perspective, how would you suggest to someone talking about niche marketing, from marketing perspective, which one do you think would be easier to market?
Well, the thing is with niching, and I've heard a lot of people talk about this, those who did do it. And it's ultimately that, you become known in that industry. So therefore you can actually charge more because you're known as a specialist. And it also helps with searches. So in terms of for Google and SEO, people searching for personal trainer, copywriter, or something like that. If I have that all in my website, as I've worked, written copy for them, or for counselors, I've done work with them, or coaches and things like that. So when they're typing those searches, then I'm coming up, rather than just copywriter Sydney, very general, very competitive. It's a lot easier to be found when they're looking up a particular niche.
Just showing you the website there, showing everyone what you do. So look, that's pretty cool. As far as working with people and becoming an expert in their field, I think that's one of the things that gives credibility in today's world. Now, you've started a podcast, and that is a new platform. It's not that new, actually. 2003, 2004 is when we saw podcasts become a thing, when iPods first came out, and the term was coined by a British journalist. But now they seem to have come into prevalence. What do you see? You've started a podcast for two questions here. Why did you choose to start a podcast, and how hard was it for you to make that decision? And secondly, what do you think from a perspective of niche and also marketing and becoming an expert? Why do you see there's an advantage in having a podcast today?
Yes. I'll start with the second one. The advantage of having a podcast is that unlike blogs or just reading website copy, I get to put my personality out there, and people get to really connect with me and get to know me as a person. I hate to use these buzzwords, but authenticity, vulnerability, all that kind of stuff is how people can really connect. So that's why it's really valuable. And I've had people going, oh, I've been listening to your podcast and I now want to work with you. And it's even though it's one-sided, they feel like you're their best friend and they feel like they really know you. So that's kind of like the benefits. And for me personally, why I did it was I knew I wanted to do some sort of, I wasn't ready to invest into Facebook ads, and I had been writing blogs, but they can take a long time to build traction. And I'd always kind of wanted to be on radio and have like a radio spot. But then I heard about podcasting and realized I could start up at home. So I thought, this is it. This is my key marketing channel, or a key part of my whole strategy. And and then I thought, all right, I'm going to do it. I do admit I've had professional speaking training. I've done TV presenting training and radio training and things like that. So and debating at school and all that. So I'm like, I can talk. I know I can present well. my biggest barrier was getting started. And I don't call myself a tech savvy person. I'm like you, Craig. I can't manage all the things. So it took me a long time to, first of all, get the equipment and then set up that equipment. It was on my floor for quite a while before I even tried setting it up, then trying it out. But yeah, now I've just recorded 40th episode, I think, just over 1,500 downloads. So it's it's very cute compared to some of the bigger podcasts out there, but I know it can only go up from here.
I think one of the advantages of podcasting and any content creation is legacy. That right now, this live stream, for example, will go up and it'll stay up and it'll be there for a good amount of time until the day I delete it, and hopefully that's never may outlive the pair of us. But it's there for people to watch and see, and hopefully entertain and educate at the same time. So I think podcasting is a simple platform and something that people can do just on their phones using certain types of apps. That it's not hard to get into the podcasting space these days. A little bit of what's the word I'm looking for? You might be able to help me. Declaration is not the word I'm looking for, but you are part of the Applaudable Network. So I'm going to be speaking with a number of people who are part of the applaudable.net platform that we're building together slowly with self-produced creators. So I appreciate you coming on board with that platform and putting some confidence in the process. It is a long journey, and it's something that I'm trying to do slowly and do properly. So I apologize for the slowness of it. But certainly applaudable.net is something that, without people like yourself jumping on board to share and cross-promote and market each other's podcasts, then it would obviously struggle. So to be an early adopter on your behalf, I want to congratulate that. But I also want to say, yes, you had the help of Lyndall Harris, who's the podcast VA. So there is other people in spaces that can help you. And I know you did an episode with her where you talk about that nervousness and the tech and having someone like a professional there to help you all the way through. So if someone's looking to get into a podcast, I'd suggest she's one of the leaders in this space here in Australia. So reach out to her.
I agree. It really helped me.
Huh?
Yeah, because she has the Australian Podcasters Collaborative Facebook group, which is where we originally met, and that I lurked in there for quite a while before I got my act together. And yes, I use the Podcast VA for all my editing, because that was one of my biggest barriers. I'm like, I don't know how to edit. So I'm happy to set up. I just use on Zoom. I have my microphone. I just basically, just like you're having a meeting interview, and then I send the files off to them. They work their magic. So it was more like the whole setup, because trying to find the music, which you can go down a whole rabbit hole, or the logo, the thumbnail, how it was going to look. So that was, once I set that up, and I did that all over the summer break where things were quieter. And then I was just, now it's business as usual. I've got my Calendly links, guests coming on left, right, and center. And yeah, it's all smooth sailing now. But initially it was like, just fumbling my way through.
Yeah, I think we've all done that. Even this episode tonight, still learning how to push buttons, but in a good way. That sounds like I'm pushing the buttons of guests there. So, but look, what are a couple of tips you give people around, marketing that you think are core if they've got a business and they're struggling with their writing or something like that? Obviously, you would probably suggest get the help of an expert like yourself. But are there any online resources or things that you would recommend, or do you have any that you can suggest that they use or to try and better their, say, if they've got a website like, search engine optimization we talk about, or marketing expertise in their own, if they're looking for their own knowledge on that space? Is there resources they can gain access to?
Like Neil Patel is really good just in terms of marketing. Like I follow a lot of his stuff. And also even like HubSpot have a lot of amazing resources. I personally, if you are struggling with your marketing, the first thing I'd say is to just really go back to basics of what are the pain points of your ideal target market? Well, know who your ideal target market is, know the pain points, and then match those pain points with your solutions. And when you write your website copy or social media posts or all your messaging, always keep in mind of they'll be thinking, what's in it for me? And don't talk about me. Talk about them. Talk about, you've got this issue, I can solve it. And that's just, I go back to those basics in my training, and people are like, oh yeah, this just really helps me with really clarifying my message. And then I say, I type as I speak. So I really love conversational language, and that's what works best online these days. So just be yourself and read out loud. And if it doesn't make sense or you're stumbling over things, the sentence is probably too long, make it shorter. Or even you can use tools like, I use like Grade Proof, which is an Australian version of Grammarly, to check the spelling and things like that and grammar. And that's really helpful as well if you're not confident in that side of things.
Yeah, so that's pretty good advice. All those tips there are all pretty relevant. And I think there's a lot of tools out there that are online, like Grammarly, and the one you mentioned. What was the one you mentioned?
Grade Proof. So that's the one based in Sydney. I've actually met the founders. So it's an Australian-based one, just like Grammarly, but it's going to work more with Australian audiences if you're based in Australia.
Yeah, so that's pretty good. We're going to talk until the next guest comes in from New Zealand, which is Joy Nicholson. So hopefully we'll hear from her. So we've still got several minutes to go of this one. But what do you think is one of the pitfalls that you see in people's marketing strategies that you feel like is a common problem with businesses where they're lacking in their marketing strategy?
Yeah, often it's consistency. So they like get excited, they write a couple of blogs, and then 6 months go by. And especially if they're dated, which ideally they should be, just so anyone who's reading it knows if it's relevant based on when it is published. So if you've got a date stamp on it and it has been 6 months, it kind of makes people think, oh, okay, they're not very active in this. Are they not active in their business? Just kind of little messages. So it's better to commit to going, all right, one blog a month and keep that happening. Or in terms of social media, consistent 3 a week, showing up, doing videos. Like everyone freaks out over videos, but so powerful for the algorithm and also for people, like I said before, connecting with you, because it's all about the branding. And there's just, so many people doing the same things these days. If you can put yourself apart by showing your personality, the right people will connect with you. And I've just found just being online consistently has really helped me. In fact, I've seen people at social events and they'll be like, I feel like you're everywhere. And I'm like, that's ideally what you want. You want to be popping up their inbox. You want to be on social media, and then also hearing me on podcast and whatever else. So just keep to a plan and keep going.
So there's an old thing in advertising and marketing 101 that they say, not advertising's like winking in the dark. You know what you're doing, but nobody else does. So that's the importance of marketing. And it's probably a good segue to lead us into the next guest in a moment, who is also in the similar space to you in marketing and helping mentor new businesses online. So just give us a little bit of another plug as to how people connect with you if they need help with their marketing and emails and whatever you need. So let's go.
Yeah, just reach out to me at righttimemarketing.com.au on the screen. Feel free to reach out to me on LinkedIn as well. I'm very active on LinkedIn. I think I'm the only Leanne Shelton, so just search for me. And my podcast, Marketing and Me, on Spotify, Stitcher, iTunes. Just type in Leanne Shelton or Marketing and Me, and you should find it there too.
That's awesome. Look, I really appreciate your time tonight, and I will get you back down the track. We'll make sure that we're exposing as many people from Applaudable on the show, and also make sure that we get the opportunity to have you back for people to ask questions. Before we do go, I'll give you a couple more minutes just to see if anyone actually does have any questions for Leanne. So if you're watching and you are in business or anything like that and you want some tips on marketing or have a question for her, ask it now, because you may not get another chance in the next minute or so. But we did have someone talking earlier about social media and podcasting, and their comment I put up before was saying the most important thing when you create is you have control over your own content, your own narrative. So that's what marketing actually is, isn't it?
Yes, 100%. It's if you look, you can outsource for sure, but you need to make sure that they have the clear brief and know exactly your tone of voice, like getting that right and having that reflect in your emails as well as your social media posts and everything. And then people really get to know you, and then they want to, because it takes up to 7 touch points before the sale happens. So if you're just being consistent across all these different spots, and then the sale will come. Maybe 6 months or a year down the track, or many years down the track, it'll come.
Like, sorry about that. I'm watching and listening. I'm looking at you, but I'm trying to remember the camera's there, so it looks like I'm looking at a different screen. I got to work out the camera. So appreciate your time tonight, Leanne, giving it up. I know you got little ones that you've been juggling, trying to get them fed and put to bed. So I do appreciate you taking time out of your evening to share your knowledge with our audience. And with that, I'll say good night and have a great rest of the weekend and week.
Thank you. Thank you very much for having me on, Craig. Appreciate it.
No worries. Take care.
All right. Bye.
So Leanne Shelton there from Right Time Marketing, and just in there, what is the best way to market yourself for employment, for interaction online, which might come up for my next guest, might be able to help with that in some way. Perhaps she is also into marketing as well. So you can see Leanne's website up there on the screen if you want to connect with her. So thanks for joining us tonight. Is the first thing I want to say. If you're joining us on Facebook, please share the stream to your Facebook page to help us build an audience for this People with a Passion live stream. You can also check out the social media YouTube channel as well. So if you haven't yet subscribed to the YouTube channel, take time to check that out. And you can see there's a number of interviews up there. And obviously this is the second episode of Be My Guest. So if you're interested in actually being on this show, then you can reach out to me by emailing at applaudable.net. So I'll put that up on screen so you can see all the socials there for People with a Passion as well. If you want to score yourself some pizza, got a little bit of a competition. Thanks to Domino's. If you're here in Australia, what you can do is basically share the stream, and I'll put your name in a random generator site prize thing. If you share it and I see your name in the list of people who shared the stream, then you'll be in the running to score yourself 2 pizzas, a garlic bread and a drink with thanks to Domino's Australia. And also if you're on YouTube and you want to participate in that, all you need to do is hit the subscribe button, make sure you're subscribed, hit the like button and write the comment done so that I know that you are interested in winning those pizzas. And if you're on Twitter, all you have to do is retweet the stream to go in the draw. Only available to Australian audiences, which is going to lead me into my next thing, which is actually my next guest who's not in Australia. But I won't hold that against her because she's from across the Dutch, as they say, in New Zealand. And her name is Joy Nicholson, another marketer who helps mentor businesses. And I'll let her talk about her marketing business. So how are you tonight, Joy? Thanks for joining us on Be My Guest.
Hi, Craig. Thank you so much for having me. I'm great. How are you doing?
I'm good. I can hear that New Zealand twang, so you definitely weren't lying when you said you're in New Zealand. So what's happening your way? Tell us a little bit about yourself so that the audience knows who you are and why you're here today.
So I started my online journey about 3 years ago, and I've been, having failures in business on and off, but about 3 years ago, I started my online journey. And it was quite a rocky road. I spent a lot of hours working in my business every week, and I failed miserably. And then I realized that I was doing everything wrong. So I set out on this journey to go and find successful people, dive behind the scenes to see what makes people successful, et cetera, et cetera. And that's how my podcast really started. And that also got me into the whole marketing thing and learning all about marketing and funnels and, how to help businesses to get leads and sales, et cetera. And, apart from helping me people to, businesses to get leads and sales, I also get myself leads and sales. But it's all diving in behind the scenes and see what makes people successful. And, so that's really my passion. is to teach people these strategies, and it's been really, really good. And especially my niche is to teach parents the strategies to make them successful and to give them time back and all the beautiful things behind the scenes that makes entrepreneurs successful, really. So yeah, that's in a nutshell what I do.
So it's interesting how people in business find an area, as Leanne was talking about. She's in the health and well-being space, and you've chosen parents and people who are potentially looking to earn income, but also have the obligation of raising children. Yeah. So do you want to discuss why that is something that you've chosen to do? Is that from your experience that you wished you'd had someone there to help you along that journey in business early? Do you want to explain why you've arrived to help parents?
Yes, definitely. So when I started 3 years ago, it was an interesting time, and I had 2 kids under the age of 5. And it was very hard because then they say, you have to do your exercise, do meditation, do this and that. And if you're a parent with 2 kids under the age of 5 and a traveling husband, you can't just do everything that they expect you to do to be successful. And then basically what I did is I coached people to start their online businesses, and they had the same issues. And I was forever saying to people, you have to do this and this and this. And they're like, but Joy, I don't have the time to do this. Or, I don't know where you want me to fit this into my day, etc. And I said, but you have to create time. And they say, yes, it's easy to create time, but I've got 3 children or this or that. And I thought, you know what, I actually understand. I'm exactly in the same position. And that's when I went behind the scenes and I niched down and I said, okay, you know what, if you have to meditate, what's an alternative to meditate for 20 minutes, for example? Then what you would do, you would meditate maybe for 5 minutes and focus on your breathing. And, so basically I put little steps in place and, things to create control in your house and to control the chaos, really. And that is little things to implement with your kids and tidying up and little things like that. So instead of you just focusing on doing everything yourself as a parent, you get the fun way to get your kids involved so they can help, etc., etc. So you can actually have more time in your day to focus on your business and be successful. So, yeah.
So I thought it may resonate with you, that experience. And it's interesting. Our last guest also works in, like I said, health and well-being. And she talks about the importance of, decluttering your life and those sorts of things. So you're in an interestingly similar narrative of space. Now, I said New Zealand twang, but I'm detecting that it might not be New Zealand. Am I incorrect in my judgment initially of where you may have been born?
Yes, I'm originally from South Africa, but we've been in New Zealand for 8 years. So
there you go. I was going to go South Africa, but I didn't want to be wrong twice. So reaching out to the international guests tonight, and my next guest is from the US. So good to have New Zealand represented, and I've had people from Taiwan and Canada reach out to be on the show, be my guest as well in coming weeks. So I appreciate you taking the time to actually join us to talk about your passion for marketing and helping parents. I do believe I read in one of your bios that you also want to help raise people out of poverty. Yes. Is that correct? So I've not misread that. That was your bio, not someone else's. So do you want to again explain how what you do can actually help people in a bad situation lift themselves potentially out of poverty?
Yeah. So one thing that I found is that a lot of, and this is like over the last 3 years that I've really gotten into this online game, there's a lot of people that have a broke mindset and they believe that they cannot do this. They work a 9-to-5 job or an 8-to-5 or sometimes even 10 hours a day. And they just don't get out of that vicious circle of getting very minimum salary. And I mean, I don't know how it is in Australia, but here in New Zealand, if you get like an average of about 60,000 a year salary, you can't really raise a family. It's very minimum money. And I mean, there's even people that get less than that. And that's a poverty cycle. Now, I did not grow up very rich, so I know how it is to be poor. And I don't want that for people. So my passion is to break poverty. My passion is to start with the families to teach them how they can start a business, but most importantly, and that's where the behind the chaos, control the chaos come from, because there's so many parents that say, I don't have the time to do this. But actually they do if they control the chaos. If they control the chaos, they can actually create time to work in their business. And I actually coach people to do this. And my coaching is ridiculously cheap for families that struggle. And so I've got coaching programs to help them to do that. And also behind the scenes, I have life coaches and mindset coaches that help people to overcome their false beliefs on thinking they cannot do this, because that's really a broke mindset that they can overcome.
It's interesting because our fears tend to limit us, and what you identify there is that, and we're in a creation space. You do your podcast, obviously I'm doing this. A lot of people wouldn't begin to fathom doing something like this, or writing a book, or creating any piece of content, because they don't think that they can provide value to anyone else or anyone else's life, potentially even their own. And that's the limiting belief. And I think that one of the things that, obviously yourself and people that I have on People with a Passion, often they derive purpose from helping others, believe in themselves is probably the point. Is that belief is where a lot of stuff starts. Now, behind me, you'll see I have an Ausswish sign there, which is a basketball program that I actually run here in Australia, working with youth and things. And one of my 4 core values, or like it's an equation for me for success, is I say perceive, believe, work hard, and achieve. So I don't believe that you can actually achieve something without a belief rather that it's actually possible. So to hear you say that that's one of the driving factors for you in marketing, and helping small businesses get off the ground, and startups, family ones in particular, that resonates, that you're helping people lift them out of poverty in that way. So I know I congratulated Leanne before on being involved in my network, but I also wanted to congratulate you for realizing that there's value in helping others do that. So a question for you, how long have you been doing your marketing? You said only recently?
The marketing has been a while. I've actually been in sales and marketing most of my life in jobs that I had. So I've always had a passion for it, but in the online space, it can be quite different. So in the online space, it's been about 3 years. Yeah.
So what's the difference between the two? So what do you see as the core differences between traditional marketing and online marketing?
When I was in sales, because it was more sales, it was you go to the client, and the client, how can I say it? You approach the client, and with the online game, you really have to be in the face of everybody. You have to show up everything, whether it's Instagram or Facebook or LinkedIn or platforms, all over it. Like, you are the face of it all. And a big difference that I've picked up the last year is that to really, really understand and know your customer. And I think this is a thing where businesses really fail, your traditional businesses, even if it's online as well, because they don't realize that if you don't know your customer inside and out, you create so much more for them. For example, if I sell sellotape, for example, you create a problem for the customer if you know the customer inside and out. So if you sell sellotape, you're not just going to sell sellotape, you're going to maybe sell the dispenser that goes with the sellotape, or you're going to figure out if they like the thick ones or the thin ones or the double-sided ones, etc., etc. That's a weird example, but it's basically, the concept is that the better you know your customer, you can solve the problem for every problem. You have a solution for every problem that you can create for them, if that makes sense. And that's what I've realized people don't understand, is that you have so many problems that you can solve for every customer if you know them inside and out. And I think that's a problem in your traditional and even like a brick mortar type business, is that people don't really focus on really understanding and knowing their customers. And in the online space, you can do so much more with that.
Yeah, it's intent is one of the biggest things when you're in an online marketing space. You need to understand, why has someone arrived at your website or whatever, and what are they looking for? So if you understand the intent behind them being there, you find that you can deliver something that they want. In the same way as solving a problem in business, if you find that's what business actually is a business wouldn't exist if it didn't have the ability to actually solve someone's problem in some area. So all those things are very important, and anyone who's in business or small business or thinking of going into business, I think that's excellent advice around, making sure you understand your customer. And it seems pretty basic, but here's the thing, is a lot of people stumble into their audience and or customer base too. Sometimes they think they're serving a certain type of people, only to discover that what they created their business for is actually serving a different niche. Have you experienced that in your work? Have you seen that where people think they think they have an understanding? So what do you say to businesses? What are some of the methods they can work out whether they're actually serving the right customer?
So I build sales funnels. So a big chunk of what I do is I do build sales funnels for companies. And so the very first thing that you do is you really understand that customer. Like you dive in deep. What do they eat for breakfast? What does a typical week look like? Do you have children in school? How old are they? Do they watch sports, et cetera, et cetera? Like you really dive in deep. And 99% of the time, which is quite a sad thing, but that's what I've noticed, is that they actually have no clue. They don't even know what's the age group that the customer falls into, which is like the very basic thing. They don't sometimes know if it's more males or more females, and I mean, something as simple as having a Facebook pixel or a website pixel or something can determine that, like those type of stats. And that's where we start, really, is to understand first, before we can do any marketing whatsoever, understand where are they, where do they hang out, and then go and find out, like everything that you can about them. And that's when you start marketing to them. And your message should talk to them, whether it's your Facebook post or your Instagram post or a podcast episode. You need to understand that this is what they are. Like if they want to buy a pen, you need to understand what is their issue with a pen if they would have to buy it off the street, So it's just diving in, but I see it all the time. I build on average about 2-3 funnels or more or less a month, and every single client have the same problem. And it's not deliberate. It's just maybe they set out wanting to only serve dads, and it ends up they say it's serving teenagers, not on purpose. It just their product or their message just accidentally talk to them. But then I keep serving dads, but it's like you're gonna have to change your messaging because dads are not interested in your product. You're gonna have to serve teenagers or change your product.
Yeah, sure. So interestingly, I did start introducing you. So I'm speaking with Joy Nicholson. I noticed you popped Joy there, but and it's she's from Marketing Wizards Online. Have I got that correct?
Yeah.
Okay. So I thought I had put a banner up with your website, so I apologize for that. I'll make sure it'll go in the description later. But so basically that's how they can find you. But there was a question earlier that was for Leanne, but it's still a marketing question, and it might be in your space or it might not. So if it's not in your lane, you don't have to answer it. But I'll put it up anyway because I do want people to ask questions. If you're watching and you want to ask a question around marketing of our guest Joy tonight, then by all means throw one out there. But this one is, what is the best way to market yourself for employment? That is interaction online. So someone using online as a means of marketing. Have you had any experience in that space?
I myself, actually, I used to temp for a while before my online business took off. I temped. And so, you have to do that proper or you're not going to really get temp positions. So the best place to go is LinkedIn, and be active on LinkedIn and be in the space where people can see what you're clever in. So if you want to have a sales job, make sure that you know everything about sales and post it on LinkedIn so people can see, okay, you know what, this guy actually knows what he's talking about. If you are in, I don't know, the food industry and restaurants, and talk about restaurants and build your knowledge, like learn a lot about these things and understand what employers that can like potentially employ you want, and just like post all these things so people like draw their attention to you, and don't use stupid profile pictures. Use an open face and look at the camera and smile, etc. And keep your social media clean, because if they do go and look for you and you don't want to look half naked on a beach or something like that. So that's my advice.
So interestingly, again, my experience as a coach in a sporting environment, I was in a professional environment with what we call an exposure camp with a number of young athletes looking at a professional team, and they actually stood up in front of all the young athletes and said, you guys have all, you're here today and you signed up to be part of this program, and we've all gone and had a look at your social media, and we're going to put some social media up on the screen here to see, some bad examples of employers actually do look at social media today and what you post, and it is true. It's making it very easy to stalk employees if you want to see what they do in their own time. Now, some people question, well, is that a good thing? But it's interesting in that environment in the exposure camp with the young athletes, when they said it, a number of them were like, oh no, and reacted. And they basically made the point, they led them on and then said, no, we haven't looked at your socials, but if any of you cringed at the thought that we might, then that should tell you that there's something up there that shouldn't be there. And if that is a worry to you, you have to understand, they said, we do look at the social media of our athletes. So before we decide what sort of person we want as part of our organization, and a lot of businesses are going to social media. So if you're looking for employment, so that individual who asked that question, I hope you got your answer. So there was a question. You have to make sure that your social media is representative of the person you want to be perceived in a work environment. That if you are a professional, then your social media should represent that. So great response to that. If anyone else has got a quick question, by all means, but I'll to throw it in there before I move on to the next guest. But what I'd like you to do is let people know where they can get hold of you, Joy, and how they can find you.
Awesome. Yeah. So I've got two sites. And my one is my name, joynicholson.com. It's my website. And there's all my marketing things, really, the funnels that we build, the coaching, etc. And then I am newly releasing my season 7 of my podcast. And my podcast is called Unleash Your Focus. And I've got a little thingy behind me there. And the website is just unleashyourfocus.com. And we're actually releasing a workbook that goes along with season 7. So it actually has systemized steps that you can follow and implement for the parents to, get you more organized and disciplined and get your goals to be, basically, how can I say this, achieve your goals. So, it's very exciting stuff. It's pretty new. We haven't done anything like that before. So, we're looking forward to helping more people with this podcast season.
That's awesome. I look forward to hearing that podcast. I'll make sure that I check it out. I am the founder of a new podcast network here in Australia called applaudable.net. I have had a number of people internationally wanting to join the network, but I do want to keep it the Australian flavour right at this point in time. But look, really appreciate your time across the ditch there in New Zealand. I hope that you have had some family and friends and customers and clients, also in South Africa that have tuned in tonight. So best of luck. Thank you for guesting and giving us your time today. It's really appreciated, Joy.
Thank you so much for having me. I appreciate your time. Thank you.
No worries. Take care. Look after yourself.
Bye.
So Joy there from New Zealand. So as you can see, her new podcast will be coming out called Unleash Your Focus, and a lot of fun and a lot of good advice there. So I appreciate her giving her time. As always, we've got people interacting on social media. So we've got comment there from Felicity. Hey Felicity, and thanks for tuning in and taking time to comment. If you've got any questions for my next guest, make sure you line them up. My next guest is actually from the US, so my understanding is he's up relatively early, and he is the author of a new book called Broken America, 10 Guiding Principles to Restore America. Obviously, the world is witnessing the I would say the dysfunction of the US system at the moment, but they're trying to work it out. It's like a jigsaw puzzle where someone's just thrown up a lot of pieces at the moment to see where some things land. And I know that the next guest is extremely passionate about being a patriot in the US and feels that he has some value or 10 principles that if leaders would actually follow the guidance that he has in his latest book. He is a best-selling author. He's also a self-made billionaire. So without further ado, I'd like to actually bring in my next guest, which is Dr. Jim White. So g'day, Jim. How are you?
Good afternoon, Craig. How you doing? I should say good evening to you. I'm doing well, thank you.
It's good. I hope they say successful businessmen are up early, so I hope that you're already up at 4 a.m. in the morning. Is it just after 4 there?
It is. And this is the normal day for me, so I am not early. That's what you got to do. You 3 or 4 hours sleep a night. so yes, it's not early whatsoever for me. So I was backstage, as you know, listening to your interview. Very, very interesting interview. So good stuff.
So I hope this interview is equally as valuable. And I appreciate, again, you're up quite early there in the US and you have just released a book. You have a number of successful books. It's not the first book that you've actually written. I'll just throw that up there and see if we can't share some of your books. I think they're down the bottom there for people to have a quick squiz at. So you've got What's My Purpose, which you wrote, I think, at the start of the decade. Is that correct?
That is correct. I released that, What's My Purpose, in 2007.
Yeah, and we can see, manage your stress and live your life. You've got opportunity investing, which I do want to talk with you about, and also your leadership and influence book. And now, obviously, this latest book, which was released Wednesday, which is Broken America. So let's get into that, because that is something that you have decided that you need to give your voice to and lend your voice to. And you've already had a number of people of key influence who have read your book, including Leon Panetta, the former Secretary of Defense and Director of the CIA in the US. So let's talk about that book and the motivation behind it and why you felt it was necessary to give your voice to this.
Well, as you stated, Craig, the United States, in my opinion, is going through a time of dysfunction that we haven't seen in decades. I am a Vietnam veteran. I have a disability. I did 2 tours in Vietnam in the mid-'60s. I am a country boy, if you will. I was born in rural South Carolina, very poor, and I credit a lot of my opportunities through military. It gave me an opportunity for education. So the U.S. that I know afforded a lot of opportunity. If you're willing to focus, set your goals, and network, and just work hard and have what I saw a compass of morality. So I'm going to be 72 years old in just 2 weeks, and watching what's unfolded in the United States, it stressed me. So wee hours in the mornings, and what am I going to do? Am I going to sit on the sidelines, or am I going to get involved? So therefore, I said, I'm going to get involved, and in a way that I never have from a political standpoint. So I wrote the book to Broken America, 10 Guiding Principles. And these principles, you're going to be familiar with them, but what a lot of people do, they do not focus on them. So I believe if you could start with these principles one at a time, understanding what they're doing, and for everybody, that's the key. We have I'm going to use the word two-party system in America. I think both sides has room for improvement, and I've never seen such polarization. We used to be arguably the greatest nation with leadership around the world. I don't think we are anymore. I get a lot of feedback, especially from the veteran community, and thank you for the book. I also get a lot of feedback saying, geez, we're still the greatest America in the world. Well, a leader in the world, I should say, excuse me. Well, yes, but we can be better. We're just a few days away for a new national election, and in America, and I think our president number 45 is not of the, in my opinion, the character or showing the leadership that we should be showing, and I think it's really coming to surface. And this COVID-19 pandemic, I believe your word is your bond. I believe everything is built on trust. And I was hearing you talk about the work you did in sports. It's all about trust. It's all about building that relationship and trust. And sometimes as a leader, you've got to stand up and speak truth. It may not be very popular, but you got to take that leadership role. And you also need to understand it's not about you. You got to leave your ego at the door sometimes. And this is certainly not the case in our current political atmosphere in the United States.
So you hitting three key words there that resonate, I think, with from an observer, myself being here in Australia and looking into the US political system and not completely understanding it. You mentioned principles, values, and leadership, and I think what's being demonstrated, and this is my opinion, there's people who obviously love Trump or hate Trump, is very polarizing, but I think that whenever there's a lack of true leadership, leadership's about bringing people together and not being divisive and things of that nature. Those things can only occur when there are values and or principles. If you're not principled and you're not valued, then you're not striving to try and pass those as a leader on to other people. So is that why you're trying to fill the void with Broken America, this book, and actually put forward some principles, because the leadership is lacking in delivering the things that most presidents would be expected to just deliver to people as part of the job?
Absolutely, Craig. I believe that we're void of those basic values currently. We have a system that in America right now that it's okay to lie. It's okay to stretch the truth. It's okay to have no empathy. Well, those things are not okay. They're not okay. They're not okay. Actually, any place on the globe, they're not okay. But we have got to look ourselves in the mirror, and all of us, all Americans, and everybody around the world. What are we doing to make a positive impact on every citizen? And what are we doing to have the globe to look at, have all of us to look and say, I have respect. I know there's tough decisions to be made, but we can disagree. We should be disagreeing with civility. We should be listening to all people from all walks of life. It just breaks my heart sometimes when I see on the news the different abuses that may be playing out in our law enforcement. Law enforcement, I'm supportive of law enforcement. However, you've got, from our Black community, all types of cultures in the United States. We got to realize that we are a nation of immigrants, and we if there's no checks and balances, and if you get to the point where you say, well, the president of the United States can stand there and tell all of these untruths and has no moral compass. Well, so can I. Because that's the reason it's so important that we have a leader in position of power that does have values and moral compass. And that's the reason I started the book off with the U.S. Constitution. I said our founding fathers and founding mothers, this is where we started. And I don't know, a lot of people in America think, well, there's no way that we can ever fall from grace, if you will. Well, there is. There's no guarantee that you're going to remain the greatest nation on earth. If you start eroding yourself inside, it's just not going to happen. It's there. There's no guarantee. You got to get up and work hard every day at making a better day, being able to have the message. And that's all of us. That's the business leaders. That's the political leaders. That's the professional athletes, if you will. I heard your story when you talking about the athletes talking to the young people, talking about the social media that you were referring to in the previous session. Well, that was great because everybody's got to be a role model. You need to be a role model, and the athletes especially has such an impact on younger generations, right? And so it's, I believe these 10 principles are extremely critical, not only for America, but around the globe.
I will ask you to mention a couple of those principles that you see as important, but what I want to talk about too is you do have the Constitution. One thing that Australia doesn't have, we're based on the Westminster system here, so our Constitution doesn't have a Bill of Rights. Things are based on what we call conventions, just understood rules, not written rules. You guys have written rights into a constitution, but here's something from an observer, again, looking at everything that's going on with COVID. is in the US is that people who, and it's the mask debate, is people who say that they have rights to do things, but what they fail to recognize is that all rights have, which marry to them, responsibilities, and that a right isn't automatic unless you understand the responsibility that goes with having that right. So, controversy around, say, gun rights in the US, you have the right to own a gun. You just don't have the right to run around shooting everyone with it. So, you have a responsibility when you have that power to do that. And freedoms of speech is the same. People who are picking sides, I guess, with freedom of speech, think that it's just right to say whatever you like without worrying about the impacts it has on individuals. But at the end of the day, no, you can say things, but you have to recognize that you have a responsibility to have discourse which is fair, and it can be truthful and painful, but it doesn't have to be vitriol and hurtful and targeting. And interestingly, I have a friend that works in the anti-bullying space, and he actually spoke to me around politics and said, in our schools, we have these anti-bullying policies, yet our politics plays out daily on a daily basis where you've got two sides. We have a two-party system here too, where they're just bullying each other. And yet they're the ones telling everyone in school to stop bullying. So if the leaders of our country can't not be bullies, how can it be expected of the next generation and our children? So I have a question for you, because it's come up, and I think it's one of the justifications for your book, is around your grandchildren and the legacy you leave them. You look back to the forefathers and founding fathers of the US and said, is this what they wanted for our country? And now you are asking the question, is this what we want for the future generations that come after us? We're at a pivotal point in time, is what you said. And how do you want to address the need to ensure that the country that you have built your wealth on is there for the future generations?
What a great question, Craig. Absolutely. And that is the point I'm making when I start with what's the U.S. Constitution and the amendments. That's our foundation. As you said, that's the rules, the written rules, and the basic values that's set out, that's served us well for over 200 years now. But we're on the 13th day of September, 2020. We're at that crossroads. And that's the question we have. What do we want to leave to generations to come? And that's reason it is absolutely essential that every American realize that I'm going to speak in business vocabulary for a moment, that you are the shareholder, you are the citizen of this country. You cannot remain on the sideline and then complain. If we don't realize that we have got to start with the basics, just like you were talking about your friend in the bullying space. We start at birth, and if we can't get past, and the first thing we got to do, we got to fire this current president. Trump must go. He's got some good policies in some areas, but he has no moral compass, and the erosion. And I did an interview a couple of days ago where the host says, I have young teens at home. I have teens that's watching the president. I have teens that's watching the president when he's going out, the president of the United States, Donald Trump, doing his rallies. There is no mask. He's bringing people together. He's putting people in harm's way. He's asking people to show up strictly for his ego. Now, that's the thing that we got to do. We have got to stop it. Is it easy? Absolutely not, Craig. Is it going to happen overnight? Absolutely not. We didn't get here overnight. We've got to do it one day at a time. And doing the work that you're doing, just bringing awareness, just the conversation we're having, I think it's so valuable because we are a one people globally, not just the United States and Australia and New Zealand. We are one people. We are here. We got the DNA. We're walking. We have the rights to all the human rights that we should. So it starts now. And like I said, I wished I had a quick fix. I don't. I don't think there is such a thing. I think what we got to do is just realize we got a problem. Now, in the United States, it's amazing to me and how many people actually support. I think that's a bigger problem, a systemic problem, where you've got maybe say over 40% of the United States that supports this behavior. Whoa, that's the problem. And that's when I go back. We got to start at the beginning. We got to start changing that. White supremacy in the United States is another, that is currently the largest single threat, according to the NSA, the National Security Council in the United States, is white supremacy. How are these people being born in the United States and come up with these beliefs in the greatest freedom country in the world? So I'm not sure I've answered your question spot on, but it's one day at a time. It's got to start from birth, and we got to start working hard. And it's just like becoming a master at anything that you do. Yes.
I think the answer's in the answer you gave, and I think it comes down to belief.
Right.
That people have been indoctrinated and asked to believe in certain things, and when you're asked to believe in something, it is a picking sides, because you have to then disagree with something else. And I think that what leaders do is they find followers that believe the same thing as them. So what you've got to do is change somehow, or create a narrative, which I think your book's doing, to change the discourse to something else, to find and give them something else to believe in. And you're coming back to the basics of what the founding fathers arrived at. Now, there was some tricky, they arrived at that around like slavery, which was, right. It's still the same. You'd think that hundreds of years on that it would be something that has been fixed and resolved, but there's obviously been an undercurrent and an underlying, which people in America and some people in America feel has never truly been rectified. And that happens here in Australia too with our Indigenous populations. And unless you can't walk in someone else's shoes. So you can only trust that what they're saying to you is true. So it's like a customer, you have obviously clients. If a customer's telling you there's a problem, even if you don't think there's a problem, you still listen to the customer to say, well, 10 customers are telling us there's a problem here. So in the case of Black Lives Matter and people saying that there's an issue with racism in America or in the police system, whether you believe it or not, there are some people who actually do. Therefore, you have to try and work out why is that the case? What is causing them to believe that, even if it's not true? If stats don't show it as true, which I think the stats sort of lean towards that there is systemic racism. So I think ultimately your book is trying to change the narrative. I just hope that it can break through all the other noise that is in the US right now to give those principles. So let's talk about a couple of these principles. I've got some questions too. So
sure.
We'll go to some questions, but what do you want to do first? Do you want to go to a couple of guest questions, or would you like to talk to the principles? You don't care?
I don't care. If we got people ask questions, let's see if we can answer some of the questions.
So we have a healthcare system here in Australia that is universal. So I don't know whether the United States, you hear this debate all the time in the US, and it seems like it's always encased and enclosed in the US. Like we changed our gun laws after a mass shooting here, which everyone was up in arms. We don't allow semi-automatic weapons to be owned by the general public, and people still allowed to shoot. They're still allowed to own guns. They're just not allowed to own military-grade weapons. New Zealand did the same after their crisis. They had a shooting. Australian actually shot up a mosque. They've changed their gun laws. So we didn't wait for it to happen a second or a third time when we had Port Arthur massacre. People could go up and have a look at that, where a man went into a recreational facility and just shot the place up and killed dozens of people. So we changed our gun. We had leadership at the time that would change the gun laws, and we still allowed to own guns, just not semi-automatics that are going to do a lot of damage in a short amount of time. And we also have a health system that is universal, that I can go to a doctor now and I might pay a small fee, but I'm looked after, and we have a public hospital system where our costs are looked after. I don't, and I think Australians and those around the world don't understand it. So the question is, why has Trump tried to take away or taken away Obamacare when it sounds pretty much like the Australian health system?
My response to that can be in one word. Trump has tried to take away every initiative, every policy that any previous president in modern history has been able to achieve, and specifically Barack Obama. He has tried to remove Obamacare. He has not been 100% successful. There are still areas of Obamacare that are in place. There's also in Supreme Court, United States Supreme Court, different cases in regards to Obamacare, but it has not been removed 100% yet. But he does so because his ego, it's got to be all about him. Only I can fix the problem. And that's what our president thinks today, which is absolutely just crazy, crazy thought.
Yeah, so it's interesting because our systems are so different. They call out the Democrats for being like socialists, but a good amount of the world actually, like, we have free education here too, and we do have nominal payment for university. Like, it's not totally free, but we have a lot of we're not as extreme as what we see in the United States, where people are mortgaging their basically their education and starting behind the eight ball before they even get a job. And here in Australia, our system, and I think this is important. I don't think Americans actually look outside their own backyard to realize that the world actually has a lot of the things that you guys are still arguing about, like what we don't want it. And they use scare tactics. But Australia, what makes Australia a wonderful country is that you can do both. Capitalism and a degree of social safety net can exist and coexist. And in fact, most countries it actually does. And the US, I think it's driven by capitalism. And you're a self-made billionaire. You've earned, so you understand capitalism better than anything else. I want to move on a little bit. We'll come back to the principles. I do want to get to them, and I appreciate your time. So I've given you the last interview tonight because I thought we take it as long as we more or less can.
My pleasure.
No worries, but I will get onto the principles actually now because I just forgot what I was going to ask. But do you want to give us a couple of the principles that you think are valuable to helping the United States move forward in what you obviously see as a crisis of leadership?
Yes. The first principle that I led with in the book is called vision. Well, vision is where are we going, as you well know. What's the end of the thing? And that is so important to define that, where it's a personal vision, a vision for your organization, or a vision for a country. So that's the first thing. Right now, it's Donald Trump's vision, not America's vision. So I talk about that. Without clear vision, strategy is just a guess. So that's a big one. The other one is, I'm going to go to principle, I got it listed at number 3, and it's called truth seeking. Well, you just laid out Australia and other countries around the world has certain policies and certain benefits that the United States doesn't happen. And what a concept. Listen to other people, right? Learn. So truth seeking. A house cannot be built on sand, and a house cannot be built on lies. So we've got to seek the truth. The other one that I had in there, courage. Number 4. I said number 4 in the courage. And each one of these principles, as you know, I go in detail what it is, what it is not, and I give examples of what's occurring so people can hopefully relate to it. And I try to go right down in the middle. This book is not about Donald Trump. This book is about, it could be any name in the White House. It could be any party. I would be saying the same thing. So vision, truth seeking, in the second one, leadership, which we talked about, leadership. And I define leadership as inspiring self-motivations in others, not threats, not fear. And Donald Trump, just like Nixon, Nixon believed that fear was the most powerful emotion that you could use. So does Trump. Fear. Well, no. You've got to inspire people. You got to tell the truth. So those are the things. And I went on to like about integrity, and I'm looking at, and I say tolerance and equality. Tolerance. We've got to be tolerant of all people. And again, communication in that tolerance is the ability to listen, not just hear. Are you hearing what people are saying? Just listening. So that tolerance and equality, and then respect. You and I have never met. However, this great technology we have, I have a huge amount of respect for what you do, what your other guest does, what your listeners are, because you're committed, you're passionate about truth seeking. You're passionate about giving people opportunities, having voices. This is what your network does. Give people voices to be to express themselves. Why? Again, I think because you're doing something. You want to help people. You want to help Australia. You want to help everybody around the world to be a better place to live for the family. And the question we talked about earlier: what's our generation going to look like? So what we're doing today, what you're doing, what other people around the world are doing in our podcast, it's so valuable to get the message out. And the other one is we talked about a lot about capitalism. You got to have you need the money, right? It's got to make this thing run. It's not a bad word. When I released the book, I got just some heart-wrenching feedback. I got a call from a 88-year-old Korean veteran, and I've never had anything like it. He read an article in the USA Today, an op-ed that I wrote in the USA Today, which released on 9/11. And he read it, and he searched it out, and he called. He left me a voice message, and he says, the best article I've read in 20 years, and this is not about my ego. That's not where I'm going with that. He says, thank you for standing up as a business person, because some of your customers may not like what you're doing, so you're putting your livelihood at risk, if you will. And I did have that discussion with my team. And then he goes on to say, I have injuries. I have injuries from Korea. And our VA system, I can't get the medical care that I need. I can't. And to me, it's just heartbreaking. And especially our veterans, veterans from all nations. And if they serve their country, especially, they should be able to get the basic health care. And that goes back to one of your viewers' question about did Obama take it? So all of those things are so important. And that's what's intertwined throughout the book, Craig, is to try to give people opportunity. Are these 10 principles read the words, are they going to be new to people? No, probably not. Probably they've been around for hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of years and thousands of years. But again, it's right in front of us. My objective is just to try to bring them back to the surface a little bit and say it is important. Truth is important. It does matter. Words matter.
It seems like they're Christian values, that they're core Christian values on which Western democracy is actually built. That all the ones that you said there, if you were to read the Bible, you're probably going to actually come up with those same things about tolerance and respect and truth and all the things that should be valued. And you talk about trust and all those elements. So it's a lot packed into your principles. And one of the people actually said that the principles are incredible. So they're thanking you for sharing those principles. They're not just principles; they're principles for life. And I think that's something that's really important. You mentioned again, you sort of touched on leadership, and one of the things I say with athletes, I try and instill a little bit of leadership in all of them. Not everyone is born so-called to be a leader, but I have a saying that I stole off someone. I can never remember who, but I always say it's not mine, which is, great leaders don't want people to believe in them. They want the people they lead to believe in themselves.
Right.
And it's interesting you're talking about Trump as a narrative. It's all about him. When true leadership, I mean, could you imagine, and I'm going to, because I went to the Bible, could you imagine if Jesus represented himself, that it was all just about him? I don't think there's anything that would suggest that he would have had a following if he didn't make it about everyone else. And that's just the irony of and I want to call out evangelicals on this, is they're almost sold their soul to the devil and had the wool pulled over their eyes by a potentially false prophet who's spruiking something that they know they don't believe, because he's committed adultery multiple times, which is a sin by any other word, under the 10 Commandments, and thinks he can shoot someone on Fifth Avenue, which is thou shalt not kill. So he obviously demonstrates day and day. Now, the people that have to live with that, he doesn't have to live with what he chooses to believe, but others are almost blind to the fact that they're accepting that when they actually support someone like that, they're actually showing that they genuinely cannot believe what they profess to believe, because if they did, they would actually see that as something that is not what they believe, and therefore they wouldn't follow that, because that's what we were talking about before with belief. So I don't know if I presented that in a good way, or whether it is a good or bad way, but it's just a perception. By the way, if people must know, because a lot of people ask, I'm actually not a Christian, so I do understand the Bible. I do, and I'm just open about that. But the thing is I want people to, like, I think that the Bible is an inherently good book. I don't underestimate the intent of why the Bible has been written, and why those values that you talk about are actually also in the Bible. I want to talk about opportunity investment, which is one of your books, but it's also your business. So I want people to get a feel for who you are as an entrepreneur and a businessman and a multi-billionaire, and what led you down the path, because you've more or less built a system where it's win-win-win. You are helping communities that need to be lifted out of poverty. So let's talk about Dr. Jim White as a person and why you have taken that opportunity investment approach.
Yeah, absolutely. And opportunity investment is a perfect example of a policy that was released under Donald Trump's administration. And December 2017, it was referred to as the Tax Credit and Jobs Act. And I was reading the act in the United States, the Treasury, the Internal Revenue Service, and I saw a couple of provisions in that particular legislation that I found very interesting, because, as I stated at the beginning of the show, I did not come from affluence. I am, that word, self-made. That is absolutely true. I know what it's like to be hungry. I know what it's like to not know where your next meal is going to be tomorrow, and hungry, or clothes. I know that. And I know what it is. So throughout my career, I've worked around the globe. I used to buy and sell companies. I owned 23 at one time, operated in 43 countries, from all walks of life, all industry, all cultures. So when I saw this particular Jobs Act, I said, people are going to say it's just for the rich cats. It's just for the Wall Street, if you will. And some of the tax cut is that. I don't agree. I say an opportunity investment. It's take a bad bill and make it better. So here is the win-win. In the United States, there's over $6 trillion of what's called unrealized capital gains that's there. It's ready to be realized. Well, what this legislation does, the Treasury Department work with each state with the U.S. and develop these opportunity zones. There's 8,800 opportunity zones, and these are in poverty. I heard you other talk about poverty. There's over 35 million Americans that live in these zones. So the opportunity from a business perspective is if you have capital gains, that's if you sell an asset, you make any money on it in the United States, you got to pay capital gains on that. Well, the rules are very specific through this legislation. An investor can take their capital gains and invest it in a qualified opportunity fund, which we have, which we set up. It's called PHT Opportunity Fund, and the fund then is working in communities to make investment in the community in every asset class, multifamily, infrastructure. We happen to be, my fund, PhD Opportunity Fund, happen to operate right now as what's called a pre-cooling or cold storage facility in an ag industry. We have a large facility in Salinas, California, that we need redevelopment. And I said, wow. And our campus, we refer to it, is right in the center of a qualified opportunity zone. So I said, well, we need to redevelop it. It's in a zone. Well, it's going to be hundreds of millions of dollars in this investment. It's set up a fund so we can get capital gains and absolutely get money back into the community at the same time. So that was the intent, and I'm very passionate about it because it's a way to stand up. We cannot rely on government for all of our answers in the United States, and that's the message. So we're out saying to our fellow investors, you got the money, you got the capital gains. Let's get off the sidelines. Let's look at a project, whatever asset class you're comfortable with, and start making a difference. But the project itself it's got to be sustainable. The tax is one thing. That's just the icing on the cake. And that I'm careful to say that to people around the world. You got to have a good project. You got to have a good business plan. You got to get a good marketing plan. It's got to be real. There's no smoke and mirrors, as we say in the United States. So the project can stand on its own and then get the investments. So if we realize if we could get $6 trillion that's sitting in the bank on the sidelines and put it back in a business that's going to give you a above average return and make a difference in the community, I think it's a pretty good thing.
I'd say that you took an opportunity and you turned, like you said, a bad policy into a better one. You obviously pay attention to detail in the policy. You did say not everything Trump has done is necessarily bad policy.
Correct.
It's the person, the personality and the values and the things that are brought to the presidency. So you obviously feel like that the presidency is more or less brought that role into disrepute and disarray. And I think you talk about, you said, and I picked up on it as you said it, the smoke and mirrors, that America's, isn't built on that. I think currently that's exactly what's happening, is that there is all this smoke and mirrors, and it's like a puppeteer who's playing with strings, pulling strings, and knows which strings to pull to get the effect that they want. And a lot of it is just smoke and mirrors and distraction. So I want to finish tonight, and we've had a lot of interaction from the audience and the guests. So if anyone else has any questions for Dr. White, I'd encourage you to do that. But I have a big one, because you opened up tonight the show with saying you're a Vietnam veteran, and your president has literally in the last week called some military personnel losers, and I can't remember the other word. I don't say the other word, but how, as a Vietnam veteran who also was wounded or has a problem because you obviously I don't know the story, but you alluded that you were injured in Vietnam.
Correct.
When you heard the terminology, losers and suckers, I think it was, when you heard that terminology, as a veteran, how did that make you feel when you heard that come from, or said to have come from the president's mouth?
Very angry, extremely angry. For a commander-in-chief to refer to our veterans, people that have lost their lives, as I'm gonna use paraphrase. If you get captured, you're stupid. If you get killed, you're stupid. You're just a loser. And this is coming from our commander-in-chief, and this is coming from someone that worked hard, because he and I are in the same age decades, if you will, in our 70s, and he didn't go to Vietnam. He did everything he possibly could to stay out of the military service. So, for our commanders-in-chiefs to even make reference to that, it made me extremely angry. I was disappointed. It brought so much pain to the people that have served, and it showed such disrespect, not only to the American, but to all of our coalitions around the world that has lost people as well in support of different initiatives. I remember I took my first R&R in Sydney, Australia, in my first tour in from Vietnam. We had a lot of Australians in Vietnam, in the area at the time in the 60s that was there. So he not only disrespects the American military, he disrespects our coalition as well when he makes that. So it made me angry. I mean, I like to use another word, but it made me angry, and I was embarrassed.
I thought I'd just raise that because you do hear, like, I think it would be understandably so. My father is actually a Vietnam veteran as well and was logistics in the Navy. And I wouldn't, again, say that he was a loser or a sucker or whatever terminology. These people went to fight, and they risk their lives, and some lose their lives. And to suggest for one moment that's not important, particularly in a world full of chaos where your president's job is to actually maintain a degree of national security, as is our prime minister, and as an alliance and allies, that's exactly what we expect. And I think that alliances are shifting at the moment under this president, and I think that's where the danger lies. Is when the world gets turned upside down. When alliances that were once important may not be seen as important today. So certainly there's a lot of interest in what goes on in the US with President Trump. What's going on with the election is also, impacts us, because we need to know who is going to lead the US for the next 4 years, who, while he's your, master in chief, what do you call it? A military, what is he?
Commander-in-chief. Commander-in-chief.
Commander-in-chief. I'm thinking of Halo game days. So he's your commander-in-chief, but technically as a leader of an alliance, like the US leads the alliance, he's also technically our commander-in-chief too, because we tend to tag along with what the US foreign policy is during the period. So anyone who thinks for a moment that it doesn't impact other countries that are in that alliance, like we're part of ANZUS, the Australian, New Zealand, US treaty. That's the treaty we've signed and went to world wars and Vietnam with. So we've stood by your side, and even Iraq and places like that. So even Afghanistan. So people need to understand that alliance is withheld for over 100 years or 100 years. It has now, because we're at the 100th anniversary of the First World War several years back. So, look, got a couple more questions, and then we might look to wrap it up. So we've got Jim. If you were running against Trump, what would I think your book answers this question. What would your basic outline be to make America great again, to steal his term?
I would continue with my book. My foundation will be built based on the principles in the book, and I would do everything that I possibly could to expose and to enhance the character, more to the character. Policy, like I said, he has some pretty good ideas, policy, but it's the character. So I would build on the foundation. And the platform would be these 10 principles that I talk about in the book, and at the same time balance some economic trade and go around the world trying to regain trust again with our alliances, with our partners. They got to trust us. And so that's what I would be doing. Continue the foundation of Broken America and the 10 principles that I lay out.
Yeah, I can't read my writing. I was trying to write, but I had a question for you. I'll try and see if I can decipher what I wrote, which I can't. So I was listening to your answer, but I did have one last question. There has been a high amount of engagement, so a big shout out to all those that have been tuned in tonight to hear Dr. Jim White speak about his new book. His new book is available on Amazon. I'll actually see, I think I've got a link here, one I prepared earlier, like cooking. I've got your website there, which I've thrown up throughout the interview. People can go check out not just this book. You are a best-selling author. You did have What's My Purpose? You said 2007, and you've got multiple other books as well, so people can actually find your works. And you also have a podcast called Healing America, which you've just started online on YouTube. So I encourage people to go up and have a look. If you've liked what you've heard from Dr. Jim White today, then he has more content that he's putting out. So that journey can be a bit of fun, but you're doing it because you want to see change in America. And I really do appreciate your time. Time is our most valuable resource. You've got up early in the morning, which you actually, someone did have a question. I might go back to that and we'll finish on this one. And then I'll let you get on with your day. I hope I haven't eaten too much into anything that's
been my pleasure. I could talk to you for hours, so no problem.
That's okay. And one day down the track, we may well speak again to see how and where America has ended up, particularly after the election, and whether you can persuade some of the leaders. Actually, my questions come back to me too, so I might ask this one.
Sure.
Do you think that there's a failing on the part of, in a two-party system, of the parties to put up visionary leaders? Do you think there's a failing that the leadership that they keep selecting are not leaders that people can actually get behind?
Absolutely correct. I think that's our largest failing currently. And I say, where are the new leaders that we're developing? Both parties, in my opinion, we're not doing a very good job of developing leaders for the future. Yeah, both parties are failing miserably in that area. Our vice presidential nominee, Kamala Harris, look, she's in her mid-50s, female African American. Well, that's a good sign. But we've got to get more young people that wants to be in politics. But politics in America has become so angry. Your life is torn apart. The interviews that I've been doing in the book, and like I said, more positive and negative, but there's people, when you start speaking up and speaking truth, people are going to take exception to it. You got to have thick skin, but you got to be doing it for the right reasons. And the right reasons is, can I make a positive difference? What can I do to be able to communicate to all Americans and all the people on the globe that we should be working together and having respect for each other? So yes, we're doing a poor job developing our future leaders.
thank you for all your wonderful insights tonight. I wish you well with your book. I'm hoping that the result of the election, either way, that people within America accept the result. I know it's going to be questionable, but at the end of the day, it's going to need people just to realise that if whatever the system is, because the system's in place with the Electoral College as well as,
Right.
That is your constitution as well as the popular vote. That if the Electoral College should come back as they did last time and re-elect Donald Trump, that is the system that the four founders, question can then become down the track whether that's something that the Constitution needs to be revisited. And I know that it's something the Republican Party does not want to touch is the Electoral College, and understandably so. But again, it is part of the foundation of the American system, and I don't think the forefathers necessarily saw this, or maybe they did, and that's the other scary thing, is maybe they understood that there may be a time where this question has to be addressed by a new generation. So maybe not all doom and gloom. That's probably the thing, and maybe the next generation you're speaking to now is that I'm sure you'll be out encouraging the next generation of politics now that you talk about your grandchildren having a future in an America that you feel you want to look back to the ancestors and say, well, this is the America they wanted. Let's make sure we realize their vision. So you're in the middle of that right now. A lot of people have agreed that it is a pivotal point in history in the US. So thanks for your time, mate. Look after yourself and all the best.
Thank you so much.
Enjoy the rest of your day. Bye.
Thank you. Have a good evening. Thank you, Craig. Goodbye.
So Dr. Jim White there. I hope you enjoyed this episode of Be My Guest. I'm already organising some awesome guests for next week. I've had people reach out from all around the world to be My Guest, from Taiwan, Canada, also South Africa, and a whole interesting range of people to talk about their passions. If you want to be my guest, then by all means, you can email me at applaudable.net. So that's mail@applaudable.net. And you can, if you've got something you want to share with the world, then by all means, connect with me. Please share this across your social media with others. It will stay up on social media. If you got value out of it and you think others will, then please take time to share the live stream with your friends, or even do a watch party or something on social medias if you can. Really appreciate everyone who guested tonight for your time. Don't forget, if you wanted to score those pizzas, if you're in Australia, you had to like and comment and subscribe to the YouTube channel. You had to share this stream, and I'll check the stream later to see which names are there. And if you're on Twitter, then make sure you retweet the stream. And if you're in Australia, I'll put your name in a random generator thing that will actually get a winner, and you'll win 2 pizzas of garlic bread and a drink. So I hope you've enjoyed the show, and until next week, all the best, and hopefully next week you'll be my guest.